Today, I'm thrilled to feature Rick Peckham, a world-renowned jazz guitarist, composer, and educator with a career that spans continents and genres. A professor at Berklee College of Music since 1986, Rick has influenced generations of guitarists, coaching talents like Kurt Rosenwinkel, Lionel Loueke, Lage Lund, and Nir Felder. Known for his innovative playing style and dedication to education, Rick's impact is felt not only through his performances and recordings, like the acclaimed Left End, but also through his widely used instructional materials and groundbreaking online courses. So, Rick, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's great to see you, Abe. Thanks for asking me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Rick, let's start from how I got exposed to your playing. I mean, aside from the fact that I was a student at Berklee and you were a teacher there, my first week of Boston, some friends said to me, "Hey, let's go to the Middle East, a very famous club in Boston, and go hear Kenwood Denard, Rick Peckham, and Esperanza Spalding." It was a trio performance, and that was the first time I got to hear you play, which was 20 years ago about.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing to think about. Really fun to think about those two players too. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I guess I remember that gig. I mean, it was always fun. It was always sort of following whatever Kenwood wanted to do. So that's what you saw, and that's what I was trying to do my best to do. And plus Esperanza, what an explosion she's experience of a career. I mean, just amazing. I mean, it was apparent to anybody that saw her. Actually, I was on a Berklee scholarship tour, and we were in Seattle where she did her audition for Berklee, and it was just breathtaking then. And then when she got to town, she had lots of different projects going, but she led some of them, and we played with Kenwood. It was a total blast always.
Absolutely. It was a great trio and probably, I remember it like it was yesterday, believe it or not. I remember that you were stage right, and you've done so many performances over the years internationally, in the U.S. And I'd like to ask you a question that I think a lot of musicians would like to know, because some people feel performing is home. Some always will say it's a challenge. Of course, it's rewarding, but for you, what is the most challenging part of still performing? Because, this is an art and it's technical. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I love performing. I love teaching, and I love learning. It's really those three things that are in cycle all of the time. And to me, I mean, it's possible to do all of those things whenever you're performing. I mean, I'm not really trying to teach anybody anything, but it's as far as just being in the moment. I mean, to me, it's I guess if you really think about it, you can get intimidated, but to me, it's just excitement. It's you've as they say that the reason that you get that feeling in your stomach is because your body's preparing for something important. I mean, it's an anticipation. It's the same thing as fear. It can either be fear, like you're being chased by a bear, or it can be anticipation, like you're about to go on your favorite ride at Disney World or something. And to me, it's just that sort of electricity of the moment that's kind of fun. And especially with that group that you saw, boy, was it ever in the moment. I mean, things would change left and right, and yeah,
Does life sort of
Kenwood,
feel like,
yeah.
one long concert in a sense? Like you can pick up from these, like I taught you, you're saying you remember that concert was 20 years ago. You can pick up little things that happen still.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, we did several gigs. I mean, Kenwood especially is. I've never known anybody with so much independence when he played. I mean, he would sing. He would be playing on a keyboard at the same time that he was playing the drums, and he would be I think it was in solfege even, singing the melody of Donna Lee while on the keyboard he's playing Back Home Again in Indiana, and he's playing great time on the drums. And that you want to talk about somebody that's in the moment. I mean, that's where he was. And yeah, it was really stimulating. But as far as yeah, like being in the moment. I mean, and this is something I talk to students about a lot. Um, a lot of groups that you see that aren't as rewarding to see. It's just a group of people all playing at the same time.
Definitely.
Whereas really, it can be like an enriched conversation. I mean, you can't really have a conversation with more than one person talking at once, but that's what happens with every band. And to have something that happens in the drums go without, kind of reflection in the rest of the band. I mean, that's a band that's missing out on an opportunity to, the interaction and communication that happens to make it so that what you're saying in that musical conversation is different that time than any other conversation that you've had before or is going on elsewhere in the world. I mean, it's a real gift to be able to do that and to have the listener. I mean, this is what brings it into the performance realm. If you're just practicing, or if you're just rehearsing, or just jamming in a room, to me, the circle's not complete. It's not complete unless you have listeners there too. It's part of the whole thing.
Absolutely. And I was doing my, while I was preparing for this, I was doing my due diligence and just kind of like, watching some recordings, some videos on YouTube and stuff. And, there was, I've come across you playing with George Garzone, and then there's also you playing Charlie Parker with the trio and stuff. So let me ask you this. What do you look for in players that you hire in a rhythm section, whether it be bass, guitar, I mean, sorry, bass, drums, piano? What do you look for in players?
Well, usually there's somebody, like on, and that album Left End that we recorded a long time ago, but it's still an album that I like. Tony Scherr, I knew him from my years in Texas when I went to University of North Texas, and Jim Black I met during my time in Boston, and they were both down in New York. I don't think they had really played together before a lot, but I knew it would be good. That was a little bit risky, but since they were both a couple of the best players of their generation, I knew it was not a big chance I was taking. But to answer your question directly, usually somebody pops up first. It'll be like a bass player that I know that's available and that I can play with. Then it's really, frankly, it's a marriage I don't want to get in the middle of, or matchmaking I don't want to get in the middle of. If it's a bassist I know and love, I just say, well, who would you like to have on drums? Or if it's a drummer that I know and love, then I say, who would you like to get together with? So again, I don't have to worry about just having them work something out. I mean, there's. I remember talking to John Scofield one time, and he talked about the album Money Jungle that had it was a trio with Charles Mingus and Max Roach and Duke Ellington, and he said that he heard. I mean, it's a legendary session that Mingus and Max Roach did not get along at all. There, if you listen to that, actually, if you get a chance to listen to that again, you can hear it. There's this sort of clash that's going on. There's sort of almost like Ornette Coleman kind of anti-time going on. It's like they're having a musical argument. Anyway, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a unified approach. Although it would be great to play with Charles Mingus and Max
Well,
Roach.
that's also a question
Yeah.
I like to ask people that I really admire and respect their musicianship is, obviously now you've gone through, your life and performing and growing as a musician. But let's say the musician you are at your optimal level today, if you could go back and play with someone in the 1960s, um, who would you hire, you think, to be in your band?
Oh, yeah. Well, there are just so many great players, and yeah, it's hard. And I've heard you ask. I've enjoyed your podcast and heard you ask people like who would they like to play with. I hadn't thought about who I would hire, but I mean, Billy Higgins is one of the greatest drummers of all time, and he's sort of famous for finding that little, just not a very heavily populated part of town where it's right in between swing and boogaloo kind of thing. I mean, not like that kind of groove that he had just with integrity to the center of the earth in anything that he played. So Billy Higgins, he did come to a Berklee class that I was teaching one time.
Oh,
I
really?
went, yeah, I went to see him play, and I told him I was doing a Thelonious Monk ensemble, which was one of the great classes I did for about 8 or 10 years before I got so heavily involved in the guitar department. And he was interested and came in and played with the band. It was, and to me, it was one of those outstanding Berklee moments where people, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And
Unquestionably.
yeah, these students were very lucky. I mean, they'd been working, and Billy Higgins came in, and he wanted to sit in with them, and it was just a magical feeling. And of course, I snuck into playing too, tried to stay out of the way, but I just wanted to get that feel. And he'd be playing time back there, and it's sort of like you hear the kind of audible that Elvin Jones does. Well, he did it too, just sort of like like that,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
back there along with the time. And the students were, they were digging deep to play as well as they could. And he'd like, and somebody'd play something that was good. He's like, like that back there. It just was a magical moment. And he took a solo where just everybody dropped out. And another magical thing about it was he went around to each person in the band and looked at them and played like a part of the solo to them. It was like a message. It was just a transcendent moment, really just amazing.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Berklee. I
Mhm.
remember when I was a student getting to go to a couple clinics and as a guitar player trying to figure things out to go sit in the BPC and hear Kurt Rosenwinkel talk and Yngwie Malmsteen like all
Mhm.
like during my time like you couldn't get too farther apart players, but I everyone has something to say.
Mhm.
And you can learn something from everybody. So
Absolutely.
when you're involved in the guitar department at Berklee and you're mentoring these people like some of which I named, uh obviously these people have had a lot of success. You have
Mhm.
to have shared something with them. And I'm not, I don't think it's just about theory or the guitar, but like, what's something unconventional that, you've tried to convey to your students that maybe, gets them to think a little outside the box in terms of this life?
Well, I got to say, listening to your podcast a couple weeks ago, where you had Oscar Stagnaro, and hearing Oscar say that a thing that he says to or when he's working with students is they need to bring out their own uniqueness. I've heard that. I mean, he didn't say this. I can't blame him for this, but instead of instruction, it's kind of outstruction. It's like with the student, it's like what's inside of the student, what can come out, what can, as a teacher, what can we do to make the parts of you that are getting in the way of you expressing who you are and really, your culture, where you come from. I mean, there's a quote by Zoltan Kodály, where he was asked, when does musical instruction begin? And he said at birth, and they said, no, actually 9 months before birth. And then he said, no, actually, I should say 9 months before the mother's birth.
Yeah.
So it's just part of where you come from. One of the things that happens at Berklee is people see, players with massive experience or massive talent that with a lot of experience. So it's possible to kind of feel down about it, and instead of feel like a first class you're a second class somebody else. But we all have to work to try to make it so that we can convey our message, our musical message. That's for sure. But it's not a matter of being like somebody else. It's like really digging into where you come from. I mean,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
you're going to find that way either way. I mean, I was with John Thomas for like my 4 years at Berklee,
Wow, that's amazing.
which was not very easy to say the least. He was kind of a It was a very, rest his soul. He just passed and everything about a year
Yeah.
ago, and he was tough, but his approach was, he wanted students to be, I think, wanted them to play like him,
Hmm.
but maybe that approach later on makes you say like I can't do this, like this isn't who I am. So it's interesting to hear, like, that you're saying like Oscar really encouraged that like individuality. I mean, there's no one way to do things, but I think it takes a certain openness and
Hmm.
self-assurance to tell someone you be you.
Yeah, well, it also is like w- good questions wins. The best questions wins. And, it's like, what do you want to do? Who are you? What are you trying to do? And, there isn't anybody I know that just wants to do what they can do right now, and that's it. Everybody's reaching for other things. And it's, uh, it's, it's helping to give people the tools to do what they need to get where they want to go. And that's certainly, and there's the curriculum at Berklee. There's another podcast I was on where I said it's like the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, the test set that you went through. Were you a performance major there? Did you do all eight
Oh,
semesters?
I graduated magna cum laude.
Fantastic. That's great. And, to me, that curriculum, it still stands. And just I looked it up earlier. The Brooklyn Bridge was built in 1869, and it really wasn't built to handle all the contemporary things that are going on that bridge right now. It's 150 years later. It's the structure of that curriculum really can bear the weight
I
of
will
a
say
lot a
this
lot
though.
of
I will
different
say
style. Yeah.
I was talking to Cheryl Bailey about this, and we were talking a little bit about, and I think Berkeley needs to be given credit for that. Although some of these things might seem super, super technical, and it's just like it's an encyclopedia. But when I was 19 years old, I got a job working on cruise ships playing
Huh.
guitar.
Hmm.
I mean, that would not have happened if I did not know the neck and could these things, sight reading, melody and harmony, interpretation, just being exposed to a lot of different things,
Hmm.
and just confidence on the instrument by learning these things. So I give Berkeley credit for that because that was something I always wanted to do. So, you
I'm
know,
glad it served you well. Yeah, and with John Thomas, I mean, Larry Bayonne, the chair at the time, and I brought him in. I mean, it was he was from Chicago. He was different than anybody else that was on the faculty, but he played with Charles Lloyd and Joe Henderson. I mean, it's incredible the experience that he had, and they're I mean, I never got to work with him as in playing with him or, talking to him about teaching very much, but it's part of the Berkeley thing that there are 60 teachers, 60 different sort of things, 60 different approaches to, you should do what I do, or let's see what you want to do, or what can we do? Who are your influences? What are the things that you wanted to do the last time you got on the stand and wanted to play something? What did you want to do that you were having trouble with? Let's square off and figure a way to kind of trick you into making it easier the next time.
yeah.
That's it.
It's interesting though. I was also with Garrison for a little bit too, and
Wow.
yeah. So it's funny the way they taught me. I feel like I'm almost doing the opposite now, which is
Hmm.
interesting. Which is interesting.
Yeah, well, in the way, I mean, with those two being themselves, I mean, they're like saying you should be yourself too. Although at the time it might have been, you better do what I do next week, or there's going to be problems.
Yeah, there were problems. It was, but like it builds character, and
Hmm.
at the time, Berkeley was it was right before people had to start doing the in-person audition, I think. So,
Hmm.
it was yeah, it was like you really had to survive. But fortunately I did, and thank you for being part of this curriculum, and Larry too, so
Oh yeah,
um
well, I'm so glad that it served you well, and you found that it served you pretty much right away. That's fantastic.
absolutely. And as far, we talked a little bit about you had mentioned who you would want to play with. And You mentioned, we talked about Billy Higgins and things like that. And if when it comes to, non-jazz,
Hmm.
are there certain things that you're still being influenced by that you, listen to when you were, like a kid, for instance, that you still come back to?
Absolutely. I mean, it's it's sort of the harvest season at Berklee right now, at brick and mortar Berklee, where people are getting ready to do their performance pieces at the end. And I have people doing I mean, they have to choose what they're going to do. Sometimes it's an arrangement, sometimes it's an original piece. But yeah, like a Coltrane solo on Moment's Notice, there's somebody working on that. Somebody else is doing a Coltrane thing on Cousin Mary. But there's another student that I'm working with doing Ernie Isley's guitar part from Fight the Power. Wow, that is an unbelievable, that's like a just Hall of Fame performance. I mean, I still haven't checked the date of when Fight the Power was recorded, but it just seems like a real fortified answer to Stevie Wonder's Superstition. I mean, it's just like, what if we really, what would be the answer to Superstition? And that's what Fight the Power answers it to. I got to check the chronology, but I just get deeper and deeper into the music of I love Billy Gibbons with ZZ Top. I love Mick Taylor in the Rolling Stones. Listening to just his guitar part, I use software called RipX. I mean, it's becoming more common. This kind of like you can just bust out the stems from whatever you're going after. So, it's all about find, feel, and flow. You
Yeah.
find what you want to work on, you make it so that you don't really have to, well, a lot of people are just find, okay, then they see something else on YouTube, find, they're just looking at things, but they're just browsing, and that can be okay. But if you're really trying to make something part of your musical personality, it's about find, feel, making it so that you don't have to think about it. You're playing it, and then flow. It's like you're not even thinking about what you're not thinking about. You're just going. That's the way it works. So I mean, to me, that's when these influences are at their best, when it just kind of breaks down. And I'll just say this: Kurt Rosenwinkel at a clinic. He came back to do a clinic soon after he graduated, and it was a lot of fun to have him there. But the thing that he said that he thinks of Berklee as each class is kind of like one of those pre the Lego kits, Lego kits where this is a fire engine, and there's another one that's a spaceship, and there's another one that is what did I say? Fire engine, spaceship, and let's I don't know, just fill in something else. But the idea of a castle, let's say it's a castle. So he said the way I saw the classes is you were just building each one of those things. But, after getting out or after you take a class, you just want to break it down to the Lego blocks, and then you put together a thing. At first, it'll look like a castle with a spaceship on it, but eventually you'll break it down and make it so it's just your own thing. You're making your own thing with
One
it.
of those
And
one of those castles for me was I did a report on him. It was Kurt Schumate was teaching this class, sir. I think it was Survey of Guitar
yeah,
Styles.
survey of guitar styles. Yep.
Right. So I did a report on Kurt and Pete Bernstein.
Hmm.
Pete I actually like later studied with at NYU for a bit,
Wow,
and I
he's
did
great.
it. He's great. And but then I did like a project. It was on Kurt, and then I ran into Kurt in the city, and I told him about. I just did a report on you, and it was
What'd he say?
he was like, "Really? What solo was it?" And it was it was a
Yep.
trip because it was shortly after that. So it's moments like that that make Berklee such a special place that you can I'm never gonna forget those things. So
Yeah, well, yeah, you're really getting every musician is their own academy when they're dealing, yeah, as far as like with a rock or a Motown or yeah, I was thinking while you were saying that, I mean, James Jamerson, can you imagine playing in a rhythm section with James Jamerson on the bass? I mean, that would be incredible. Yeah. So James Jamerson and Billy Higgins, that'd be a good band.
You know what? And with that new app, Moises, it's called. You know that new app that's out?
Yeah, Moises, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could probably create something, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I just heard from a student yesterday that Cubase is a thing that's like Pro Tools or Logic, and it's a Steinberg software, and it does what Moises does, or that other one I was saying is Ripex. That's another one that you just put in the MP3 and it just breaks it right up, and you can slow it down, speed it up, isolate it, make it
Yeah, I
into,
mean, I've been
yeah,
taking the
MIDI.
Grant Green records and just taking out Grant Green and like playing the tunes. It's been so much fun. And
That is great. Yeah, I mean that's another thing in thinking about teaching. I mean I've been listening to a coach talking about you don't learn to play, you play to learn. I mean, that's what it works. If you're not playing, you're missing out on all the fun. And yeah, like digging in with those Grant Green rhythm sections, being able to pull him out or listen, isolate it and listen to it too. It's a real gift of our time that we're able to
oh,
do that.
absolutely. The technology is, just it's remarkable right now. And you've been at Berklee for a long time. You've had the chance to play with all of these people and contribute to the education world, like those things that are out there, or, are documented, that like the teaching materials and things like that. Um, at this point, what are you most grateful for about in your journey, you think? Is it the Berklee the
Well, I'm
position?
I'm just I'm grateful. I'm most grateful just to the music and musicians and what they produced. I mean, as far as opportunities, I feel very fortunate to have done them. I mean, originally I'm from Ohio, and I really had to look around for the lessons that I needed as a player to get to the place where I wanted to be as a player. And it gradually took me to Columbus, Ohio, and then down to Denton, Texas for North Texas State, where I got to work with Jack Peterson, who was the guy that started the guitar program at Berklee
Yeah,
before
he was.
William
I
went.
think he was he still teaching? He was teaching there at least when I was there, I believe.
At no, you're thinking of Jim Peterson, maybe?
Okay,
I'm not
that's
sure.
probably it.
Yeah, but no, Jack Peterson was a teacher in the early '60s at Berklee.
Got it.
A couple of his students were Mick Goodrick and John
Abercrombie, right?
Abercrombie.
There we
Yep, yeah, and Toshiko Akiyoshi and Keith Jarrett was there at that time. I mean, it just that's yeah, early days, early '60s, and then he went down to Texas, and fortunately, he wanted to teach. So and he's just a fantastic teacher, amazing teacher. So I guess I'm most grateful for having so many people that helped me to learn more about what I wanted to play and learn more about how to convey it to others, and really in a non-intimidating way. I mean, to me, it's we're all in here trying to do the same thing. Like Berklee is a place where at least when I got there, and for the most part now, it's not you don't talk to Professor Kelly. You talk to Jim Kelly. You hang out with Jim Kelly. It's not Professor Jeffrey Lockhart. It's Jeffrey. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And it's because we're in there shoulder to shoulder with the students trying to get closer to this music that we love. I mean, it's an inspiring thing, and so many great like Jack Peterson, Dan Hurley, who was down there in Texas. I mean, Jerry Coker, I got to meet him and work with him very briefly, but just the spirit of him goes on forever. And then the opportunity to work with George Garzone and Hal Crook and Jerry Bergonzi, all these, just this, it's just basically like a hall of fame of the greatest teaching ever, And again, the common thread with all of these people is that they aren't looking to put things in your way. They're looking to give you the tools so there's no barrier. You're just going straight to what it is that you want to say. And that's,
Yeah, I think it's
to
all
me,
just
that's
about.
what I'm trying to do.
Well, yeah, I think it's just all about boosting people up at the end of the
Yeah.
day. I mean, I think it's good to push people or to be pushed if someone's better than you. Like that's fine, but I think that's good, but it's all about lifting.
Yeah, well,
Is
pick
it-
up inspiration. It's like, look at what that person's able to do.
Totally.
And sometimes it's the temptation is to deify that person and just say, well, well, that's just Kurt. It's like that's what he does. And it is true. I mean, he's one of the voices of a generation, and that happens. But the thing to do is, if you just say that it's inbred or whatever, that's selling the person short. He worked and worked to get his own vocabulary, and you should do the same. You find, get in there and do it. See how much you can, just like a crossword puzzle, just fill in as much as you can, and then just take care of the gaps as you can as well.
Totally, totally. No, no, Rick, this has been great. It's such a pleasure to sit down and talk with you one on one, and dig deep a little bit. And I greatly appreciate it. Where can everybody find your website, social media, all that stuff, if you want to?
Oh, yeah, well, it's rickpeckham.com. That's a place where if you can remember my name, that's an easy place to remember. There's the Berklee Online. There are classes there. There are the Hal Leonard books as well. I mean, it's just under good old Amazon or something. You can get it that way. So, yep, I'm fortunate to have quite a number of ways you can get a hold of me.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Rick.
Thanks, Abe, and congratulations to you on this series. I mean, it really is fun
I'm loving it.
to hear your conversations with, just not the common everyday people that you hear talking about the music that we love. I mean, it just there's a depth that's there that you're helping to share with the world. So
No,
good
thank
for
you
you.
so much. I mean, that's what I'm going for. I mean, we want to know. We want to
Yep,
know. What do
that's
you?
great.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.